Good evening. It is Tuesday, April the 23rd, about 8:45 p.m. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson bringing you a wind and weather forecast for the Charleston Ocean Racing Association Quicksilver run to Hilton Head this Friday starting at 4 o'clock p.m. Let me go ahead and minimize myself, show you the website here. Here's the CORA website, and you can come here to look at the preliminary sailing instructions, registration, which the cutoff date is on the 25th at 6 o'clock p.m. CYC is the start line, and the race begins at 4 o'clock p.m. So always come here to the skipper's info, drop down tab, come down to offshore wind and weather, where this video will be posted as soon as it uploads to YouTube and I get it on there. And you can come here to look at any future updates if I get one in tomorrow night and even into Thursday for some final forecasting, at least for Thursday night for the Friday race. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a look. It looks like we could have a messy Friday to start the race simply because we have a cold front coming towards the region. That's in part by this area of low pressure that's going to be gaining some momentum as it heads towards the southeast region and sweeps up across the Appalachians on Friday. And if we go into time, we can see how this is sort of progressing. There's the low, and then it sort of falls apart, but then it draws a cold front, actually a double cold front, as high pressure builds down across the northern tier and pushes this energy forward. What it does, though, is it creates a lot of scattered rains and showers out ahead of it. So we're looking at a wet day, possibly some heavier stuff later in the afternoon, possibly pushing into the evening before that cold front sweeps through. And you can see it here. The rain drops off at this day, but we can see the rain quantitative precipitation forecast at day 3 right here, where it looks rather light, maybe a few moderate. This is cutting off in the evening on Saturday, or in the morning on Saturday, and you can kind of see the rainfall spread amount. Looks like it sort of weakens. The front weakens as it heads towards our coast, but we can expect some showers to go with it. Here's the GFS model. We start out Friday morning, and we see this moisture making its way towards the South Carolina coast by 8 a.m. This gets into 2 o'clock p.m. where we see some widespread showers going over the area. I don't think we have many storms to worry about. It doesn't look like this is going to hold up too much. There may be a few embedded convective areas late afternoon, maybe between 3 and 5 o'clock p.m. from what I'm seeing right now. It doesn't look like anything too serious. But as we go forward, we see that this area of high pressure that is building across, but right behind it, it's going to be driving down a northerly flow, which we're going to be looking at what time that's going to be occurring. It could be an initial moderate pulse or even kind of a strong pulse overnight in the early morning hours, just before sunrise. We may see that north wind arrive even as early as 2 or 3 o'clock a.m. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the Euro. Here's the Euro model. This is Friday morning at 2 a.m. We go a little bit forward in time into the afternoon. Here comes that widespread rain Friday evening around 8 o'clock p.m. Things start to clear out at that point, and that's when that northerly wind, I believe, is going to start arriving. In fact, if we look at the surface winds and knots, we see that northerly flow start to arrive sometime Friday night into Saturday morning. Now, this is going to likely increase as it comes down over the area initially and then back off somewhat. So we'll get into that in just a minute, but I'll go ahead and take a look at the GFS for Friday afternoon. This is Friday morning for the winds, 10-meter winds. And now the GFS gets a little bit aggressive with this by the afternoon. This is 2 o'clock p.m. We go forward into time. This is 2 o'clock p.m. We go a little bit forward into time here, and we see that the winds are really ramping up along that initial cold front line that comes through. That southwest or south-southwest flow even can become a little bit aggressive. The GFS and the Wave Watch 3 models are kind of ramping this up a little bit, but the Euro is holding back a little bit on the moderate side, say between 12 and 16 knots. So we'll have to watch that. This may make you have to have a decision where, as we get into Friday evening, how far offshore you want to go on a southwest wind with this northerly wind biting down. The GFS brings that northerly wind down as a northwest flow initially as we get into 2 a.m. and you can see it ramping up with the GFS here, where we're getting some moderate values off the coast, and this is at about 5 o'clock a.m. Saturday morning. So we'll have to watch this, and as time goes on, it starts to bend over from the northeast, and we see that moderate flow increase, but then by the afternoon it falls off. So that's sort of what we're looking at for the winds, after the rains fall. We may see a westerly flow initially, and then sort of clocking over in directions where it goes from west to northwest, holds for a bit, heads north, kind of gives you an initial burst, maybe even a moderate to maybe strong burst with some gusting into the 20s, and then start sort of backing down. Once that initial burst happens, it backs down a little bit. And if we look at sail flow, I'm going to use the Fripp nearshore buoy as sort of a guidance for this, since this is approximate area where you'd be coming in towards the Port Royal Sound. And what we have here is we go into time on this model. Let me blow this up a little bit. You can see it better We get into Friday now. The high resolution models haven't quite come in yet, so we're not there yet as far as some of the exacts, and we'll get that a little bit more tomorrow and definitely more on Thursday. We'll have some better idea of that. But Friday, you can see the models are all over the place on the speeds. You can see the GFS here by 3 o'clock p.m. and then winding down as we get into the evening hours. And some of the other models, they do keep it southwest up into a certain point where later at night we start to see that westerly shift and then the northerly shift. Some of the models bringing it in somewhere around 5 o'clock a.m. A couple of models here bringing this a little earlier, around midnight, maybe 1 o'clock a.m. So there's still a little bit of change that could occur in these models, and as we get closer in time, we'll get that a little bit more exact when that may happen. But just know that the winds are going to be clocking over, so they're going to be veering from southwest over to west to northwest to north, and ultimately to northeast by Saturday morning, where we could have a moderate flow along the coastline once the sun comes up and has time to heat things. As far as swell heights, let me go up to, or back to, this thing. I'll always put this in because it's nice to have some swell guidance from the National Weather Service model here. By Friday, looks like that south wind is really going to be kind of ramped up. And, we're looking at, let me see if I can get this to stop. Here we go. Let me back up just a little bit. We start Friday afternoon, swell heights anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. You could see some higher swell, especially that south wind or that southwest flow coming across the Gulf Stream could kick that swell up a little bit higher. So you may want to plan for 3 to maybe even 4 foot swell as the further off you get offshore. So my call is for 2 to 4 feet Friday afternoon into Friday evening and night. As we get a little bit further in time, we see that swell backing down because when the winds switch up by the morning, I think we back down a little bit. Overnight, the swell stays from the south. We get back down to like 1 to 2 feet, and then things start to ramp up Saturday as that easterly flow pulls in by the morning time. So sometime mid-morning to afternoon is when the swell actually shifts all the way from the east as that northeast wind ramps it up. So hopefully we'll be wrapping up the race before that happens, before things get kind of rough out there. But that's kind of what I'm thinking for right now, and that's pretty much what I'm going to stick with. So for Friday afternoon, we start out with an aggressive southwest flow that backs down while turning west. You may have a little westerly pulse in the evening, and then clocking over or veering over from the north, you may have an initial burst near 20 knots. So if the further you are offshore, you have to deal with that north wind. But as it clocks over to the northeast during the early morning hours, you may have a little bit of downwind guidance to get up into the Port Royal Sound. Now, coming into the Port Royal Sound may be a little bit tricky, but we'll see. We'll get another forecast in tomorrow night, and we'll go from there. Sea surface temperatures. Let me go to the East Coast. Looks like Charleston, South Carolina. We are right near 70 degrees for our sea surface temperature, so it should be pretty pleasant. Friday night, temperature should drop down into maybe the lower 60s. I don't anticipate anything on the chilly side, so looks like things are going to be warming up this week, and then it may cool down a little bit by Saturday morning, may get down into the upper 50s before the sun comes up and then get back up into the 70s. So that'll do for this round, and I'll be back on tomorrow night and Thursday night to give an update. But until then, everyone keep an eye on the weather and watch what's going to happen for Friday afternoons for the rains and possible storms. All right, thank you for watching. Check with you later.